So this is kind of how it all started. Gavin said that, Governor Newsom said that his son is a big fan of the Charlie Kirk show and that he really wanted to come to the studio. And I responded off the cuff and rather sharply. And I'll tell you, when you have conversations like this, you see, Governor Newsom was being overly effusive in his praise towards me. So you have to kind of meet the interviewer at his frequency. Remember, I'm a guest on his show. So here's a guy who I believe has done incredible damage to the most beautiful state in the country, that I believe has done just unspeakable harm to the great people of California. So here he is kind of throwing on the praise. It's a difficult thing because you don't want all of a sudden look as if you're just coming out like super aggro. At the same time, you must challenge. So I tried to get in a couple little one-liners here or there. Listen carefully. Play cut 174.
Last night, trying to put my son to bed. He's like, no, Dad, what time? What time's Charlie going to be here? What time? And I'm like, dude, you're in school tomorrow. He's 13. He's like, no. This morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, I'm coming. I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is
you canceled school for like 2 years. One day.
The point is the point, which is you are making a damn dent.
Thank you. I'm kidding.
You canceled school for 2 years. Come on, I mean, you had the Zoom class for 2 years. You were shut down all the California schools. All kidding aside, it really just showed the power of this program, the power of all of you that subscribe to our show and keep the momentum going, that we are reaching the sons and daughters of the Democrat ruling class. And I just want to have the offer to Governor Newsom, both privately and publicly. We'd love to have your son come to one of our Turning Point USA events. We won't make a big deal out of it. We won't say, oh, this is Gavin Newsom's son. No. We just want him to be able to have a patriotic experience this summer. We have our Student Action Summit. We'd love to have him come to Tampa, Florida. He could bring a couple friends. I think it would be incredible to have Governor Newsom's there. Again, we wouldn't make a whole thing, a display out of it. He can make up his own mind. But it does show the impact of the virality of what we've been doing. And I wonder if that was one of the reasons why I was invited to be the first guest on Gavin Newsom's program. I was the first guest on the program, and I wonder if there was something to do with his son. And so, but we are reaching the next generation. We are reaching young people. And one of the pieces of tape that we will get into is how I explained how younger voters are the most suicidal, alcohol addicted, anxious, and quite honestly, suffering generation in modern American history, if not in American history. Let's play cut 175.
When you go to these college campuses, I love watching your TikTok, which is next level. And clearly, that's expressed by my 13-year-old son.
I want to meet this guy.
Yeah, I actually.
He's coming to a Turning Point event this summer, Tampa, Florida, Student Action Summit.
I actually am by the way, if
you should be concerned.
But actually, let me say, here is why I'm concerned, because you have expressed that I should be concerned as a Democrat, that we're getting clobbered.
Okay. Yes.
That you've figured something out.
It's not me. The president first deserves the credit.
But why? No, hold on. You were at this before Trump was Trump.
I know, but
he was a Democrat back in 2011 and 12.
The president deserves huge credit, and I just have to say that as an obligatory thing, because without him, our movement would be small. And you can appreciate that in politics. You have to appreciate the person who is the catalyst.
For you, that's what you sort of attached an identity.
It was also just the catalyst. It was a cultural moment that just opened us up.
By the way, the media is covering this all live. It's big coverage about how Gavin Newsom is breaking with the Democrat Party. Daily Mail, Fox News, across the board. Here's going to be interesting for Gavin Newsom. Look, it's not worth our time whether or not the shift is legitimate or not. I don't think it's legitimate. I think it's all just political opportunism. Will the Democrat Party put up with a candidate like Gavin Newsom who's trying to moderate his views? Will they allow somebody to say, nope, actually, no men and female sports, to try to help rebuild the image? And we went right in, by the way, on all the race stuff, Prop 16, legalized racial discrimination. I also challenged him on the most radical trans law in the country. And to be honest with you, we'll play this tape of when I challenge him on the most radical trans law. He's so slippery when it comes to the California stuff. He'll argue from authority, be like, no, that's not actually what the bill says. This. And I know he's wrong, but I don't have the bill handy. So you kind of get lost in the details there. But I'm still glad I brought it up. So this has been one of Gavin Newsom's most effective attack lines when he is on a show like Sean Hannity or when he goes up against Ron DeSantis. He says, you guys are book banners. So he brought that one right out of his back pocket and he decided to deploy it. And this is how I've always wanted Republicans to reply to the book banning issue. If I may say so myself, I thought I did very well on this. We actually did zero prep on this. We were prepping for all the different types of things that could be brought up. We did not bring up a book banning. This is how, if I was a Republican, this is how you should respond to this issue. Play cut 192.
How about the book ban stuff? On a serious note, 4,240 books or titles, libraries and schools were banned in 2023. Is that not, as a conservative?
Well, it depends. I think we can both agree pornography should not be taught to 9-year-olds.
Fair point.
Okay,
Fair.
So that's a book ban.
All right. Well, there were some other books.
No.
Bill O'Reilly's
that was the
banned.
Moms for Liberty contention. Time out.
Yeah.
I agree on Bill O'Reilly. The Moms for Liberty movement that you made a big thing of was just no porn to 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
We agree. So those books should be banned.
Well, okay.
So what we should do right now is every California school that has porn in their library should be kicked out.
Does that include the
ban.
Bible?
Well, I wouldn't say the Song of Solomon is porn.
No, but some have made that point. Is that a fair point, or is it offensive?
I don't think that's fair
and as
at
a man
all.
of faith, and I deeply admire that about you.
Thank you.
Sincerely.
Yes, but no, again, the Song of Solomon is rather risque.
No, it's
but
very.
What we're talking about in these books is not just the words, it's also the images. And again, your audience can look at the images themselves.
Okay.
It's highly graphic. But again,
it seems a banning binge. At next level, sort of cancel culture.
But why do you think moms are doing that? Do you think it's because they want to have mind control, or do you think that they have come across incident of highly provocative material?
I love moms, but this moms, we don't have to get into Moms for Liberty. It seems
you brought up the book bans,
deeply organized for a larger agenda, but that's my humble opinion.
No, but let me just, kind of complete the point. Is that it's easy to just call it kind of a book ban, but when you actually have to read some of these books, it will take your breath away of some of this stuff, right? You're like, okay, we're teaching a 10-year-old how to put a condom on.
I know. I just have a problem with, who the hell is going to decide that? Government? Ron DeSantis is going to decide what I can read or say in the boardroom, in the classroom?
This is the exercise of politics, though. Yeah. The exercise of politics is the highest form of community because it blends morality and sociability. So what we do is we have discussion and elections, and we have boards and commissions, right? And we as a people say, okay, no porn for 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
And that's politics, right?
I get it.
I'm not saying that there's
we got to stress test whether the Bible's included in that. I don't even want to go forward anymore on this. No, it's tough, but this becomes the dialectic.
I have heard a lot. I've never heard. That's interesting, though.
It's a provocative. I don't mean to offend. Again, I deeply don't mean to offend. By the way, Father Kaz would be offended with me.
If you think the Bible's pornographic,
there's most of these books are quote unquote not pornographic. There's sections that can affect
of images that are very violating to young kids.
Some we would agree on that.
Can I just say one other thing? But if you want to learn, Governor, and I'm happy that there is a movement of moms that's growing where they feel as if our kids are being hypersexualized. And I agree with them that they have to hear topics.
Social media?
Well, both in the social media and the classroom. Particular.
So that's how you handle, in my opinion, the book banning issue. And look, Governor Newsom that said, I don't want to go any more forward on this. Because it's very easy to say book ban, book ban, book ban when you frame it as what it is, which is a common sense just kicking out of pornography in our schools. And him mentioning the Bible is just so ridiculous. The only reason I did not get indignant is that there are some portions of the Song of Solomon that are risque. I wouldn't say it's pornography, but the issue has always been visual images for 8, 9, and 10-year-olds that are so violating, not longer holy texts that may or may not be read to kids, which I think is just such an outrageous example for him to try to bring in there. But he was starting to lose and then comes back in. So, no, we don't want to talk about that anymore. Also, they call them book bans when it's just, why are we teaching this book? Why is this book in the library for 5th graders? That is not a ban. It is not a ban. It's maybe a ban on pornography, which we can all agree with. So here is another lengthy clip that I want to play. And now before I get into it, I knew the details dangerously enough on this topic. However, this is where Gavin Newsom is his most slippery and his most shifty and the most clever. Anything to do with a detail in California, he will argue from authority, get hyper aggressive, talk over you, and say, you don't know, you're not from here. This is the most radical trans bill in the country, without a doubt. And I want to even get some of the text here and read it on screen. Blake, can you guys get it while we're leading up to this? Essentially, as it is written, a teacher cannot be fired if they do not tell parents that their kid is transitioning at school, is taking hormones at school, or is calling him or herself vice versa sex. There are other elements of this bill that I was not able to recall. I'll be perfectly honest with you, candidly, right there on the spot. I have a good memory, but it was just, there's so much kind of going on there. The question is, who has sovereignty over our kids? We never got really into that. But anything to do with California, Gavin Newsom will rise up. You don't understand. This is not what he does, this thing with the hands. Let me tell you what's really in the bill. That's not what it is. And I even doubled or tripled down on even the extreme example because, yes, I think a teacher should 100% be fired if the teacher does not tell a parent that their kid is transitioning. Of course I do, even though that is the more radical extremist interpretation of this bill. So it's just one example of how he reacts to anything to do with California. It's also very good for anyone who might be dialoguing with Gavin in the future, anyone that might be debating against him in the future. When it comes to California, not only do you need to know your stuff, you have to be willing to get into the trenches because he'll just try to bring you down right into the gutter on the issue. Muddy it up, get into the weeds. It's a very effective debate tactic. Is it rooted in truth? Of course not. Play cut 194.
You signed a law where school districts can't even tell parents if their kids are trans.
Not true.
Okay,
Factually
then,
untrue.
Okay, then.
No, they can. They just can't get fired for not doing that. And it wasn't just trans.
Fired for not.
The law was explicit, said you can't be fired for not snitching on a kid, not just for being trans, for being gay. And my point is, how in the hell?
But shouldn't the parents know?
They have every.
Wait, is telling parents snitching?
No, the teachers themselves have the right. The law is they can do that. They can do that. We're not saying you can't do that. We're saying you shouldn't be fired if you choose not to say Johnny was talking about liking some other boy. That's a
charitable reading. The other
it's
way
not charitable. It's actually the freedom not to.
Let me tell you
snitch.
the other way to say this: that a teacher, of course, should be fired if you don't notify a parent of what's happening to their kid. Of course, they should be terminated for that.
On health and safety, shouldn't they be teaching? I want these kids to teach. I want these teachers to teach. And by the way, if they feel like the health or safety of their kid, they have a responsibility to communicate. They still can. By the way, we're not telling these teachers they can't. We're saying they won't be fired if they don't look around and say in the recess, there were two boys. Why didn't you see that? You're fired. You should have said something because they're talking about
two different things. But there, of course, should be a penalty measure, whether it be termination or whatever, if a teacher withholds information from a parent. Because what you're saying is that there's no way to hold them accountable. So you're saying you're
accountable to what though? Accountable to two kids talking about the fact that
this is
talking about subject matter. All of a sudden now we have to have teachers policing speech or conversations.
I think you would
even
agree, Governor. That is an over extreme example. What we're talking about.
No, but the extreme example. This was a solution in search of a problem.
What we're talking about is which happens a lot, unfortunately, is if a young girl says that, hey, I want to transition, and the teacher accommodates and affirms it, and the parent doesn't even know. I have met parents like that in the state. I heard
Trump, and then they come back and they're a boy or something. There's so much extreme rhetoric
I will say,
space.
and we don't have to, we don't have to wrestle too much on this topic. But you guys will lose on these topics, and you might disagree.
But I'm one of those guys, and Charlie, I appreciate, and I by the way appreciate the civility which we're engaged in this conversation sincerely. I don't mind losing. Sometimes you lose on principle. It's one of those things. Everything's not political is the point. And sometimes the principle, and by the way, mad respect for you on abortion and same-sex marriage. You feel
where
the
the
same
American
way.
people don't agree with me.
Exactly. And I admire that on principle. But for me, it's not just political. And I appreciate you making that point. I deeply am mindful of the politics of this. which are very unhelpful.
Okay, I just
personally, it's unhelpful. More broadly, professionally, the Democratic Party and our brand. And one of the reasons, to your point, the Democratic Party brand has just been crushed.
And so, as your self-awareness is helpful to know, because it is deeply unpopular, and I think that is an ascendant political force,
right,
that is not going away.
No, I appreciate, but I also appreciate you hold deeply unpopular beliefs.
Of course I do, but
But you're not running for office.
I'm not going to run for president as a moderate.
The facts are this. It's very simple. A California public school teacher is not required to inform parents if their child is transitioning. In July 2024, Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 1955, also known as the Support Academic Future and Educators for Today's Youth Act. The legislation prohibits school districts from enacting or enforcing policies that require teachers or other school staff to notify parents about a student's gender identity, sexual orientation, or gender expression. So he's taking an incredibly extreme interpretation of, and it goes back down to the core. Whose kids is it? So it doesn't block them from telling, obviously, but it enables teachers who are trying to secretly transition kids while the parents are clueless. Let me say that again. It enables and protects teachers who are secretly trying to transition kids while parents are clueless. I thought I did okay. I thought we probably went to a draw there, but anything on California, it's very, very difficult to make any progress with him. Very difficult. With the stock market at record highs, are you prepared for the next downturn? Corrections can be unforgiving. Smart investors know diversification is the key to financial security. Noble Gold Investments make it easy to diversify with gold. With over $2 billion in sales, Noble Gold has helped thousands of Americans add gold to their portfolios. Open a qualified account today and receive 2 5-ounce silver America the Beautiful coins as a thank you. NobleGoldInvestments.com. Don't let the next correction catch you off guard. NobleGoldInvestments.com. Let's go to more. There's so much here. The one I want to get into is Prop 16. So Prop 16 is one of the most radical things that has ever been proposed in the history of the state of California. He was not prepared to be able to defend this, and he tried to weasel out of it, saying, oh, I don't know the details of it. This would have made racial discrimination legal in the state of California, and the voters of California overwhelmingly rejected it. He knew I got him on finally a California detail in 2020. I got him on one California detail. He was not prepared for Prop 16. Kudos to Blake for pulling this one out. And it wasn't like a small thing. This was a major racial reckoning ballot referendum in the middle of 2020 that he endorsed. If you want to see kind of what he believes and why he believes it, he was not prepared for this one. He was, of course, prepared for wildfires, and he was prepared for homelessness. He's got all his little talking points for that. Prop 16, whoop, little bit off edge there. Play cut 187.
By the way, you're talking to someone who's never supported the defund police movement.
I know, but
I was explicit.
But
also,
hold on one second. You did support Prop 16 in 2020, which would have legalized racial prejudice, right? Prop 16 literally would, and it
I have to go back to my Prop 13.
You know, you're smart. Prop 16.
I taught 960 SAT, so a little humility.
Hold on, no, you're the governor of the largest state in the country.
No.
No. I saw your debate against DeSantis. You're good at this stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Prop 16 would have had legalized racial prejudice, which would, and it got defeated by 16 points despite all the institutions. Yeah. So you're asking me, what did wokeism look like? When California, when all the institutions, yourself included, with all due respect, embraced this insane ballot measure, guess what? Even the people of California didn't want racial discrimination.
Remember, California since 1996 has had Prop 209s. Okay.
There was, city council meetings where they said the white people aren't allowed here, right?
And that's not good.
No, it's not good.
Stuff, yeah.
And so what ends up happening is a broader question of sensible, not racist suburban moms that are like, wait a second. I have a 8-year-old white son. Are you trying to say he's a racist?
Yeah.
And it creates a backlash
totally get it.
That then bubbles up, right?
I appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, he knows what Prop 16 is, for the record. He knows exactly what it is. I got to go look at my notes. Okay. Xi Jinping, this one really, of all the ones where I got a little bit ticked, I don't think it showed too bad on camera. But where they were able to clean up the streets when Xi Jinping arrived. And he's like, oh, you guys weaponized this one. You guys weaponized this one. Which one is this? Which cut is this? I'm trying to see which one that would be. I don't know if I see it here. then I guess we'll go to a different one. Let's go to this one here. 179. More fun.
You're talking about your whining and dining at French Laundry.
Yes, I was talking about the importance of never. I can't help you with a reservation.
I get such a kick out of this whole shtick. I got to be honest. So
Jesus, very nice. By the way, we couldn't have this conversation with that conversation. Dumbest bonehead move of my life. Okay, own it, move on, grow up. And I'm trying to.
Is that you talking to yourself?
That's me talking to myself.
Okay.
I'm just looking. I'm staring. I'm looking right at you in the eyes as I say that, just to get your reaction.
Here's the Xi Jinping clip. The French Laundry one we can go on at length. 183.
Why is it you were able to clean it up for Xi Jinping, but you can't clean it up?
Guys, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. By the way, you guys weaponized that. I saw that on 25 things. It was the most ridiculous. That was you know what? I will happily revert back to your
Can I have the streets as clean as Xi Jinping?
In this case, weaponized.
Can I
weaponized.
Can I get the Xi Jinping streets back?
It was ridiculous. Give me a break.
No, but Governor, with all due respect, I saw a beautiful
absurd.
Picture of San Francisco that looked like Singapore.
By the way,
and then Xi Jinping leaves and the Walking Dead come back.
By the way, it was APAC. You had dozens and dozens of foreign leaders. And California is not San Francisco, but I am the governor of California, not the mayor of California, not the mayor of San Francisco.
You were the mayor, but I just want to understand why is it that we have to clean it up?
20 years ago.
But you have to admit, it's emblematic of something that if enough important people show up, it can get clean. So why not make it clean all the time?
That one I was proud of, which is exactly right. If enough important people show up, San Francisco can be clean. Homelessness is a choice. It's not weaponized. We're not trying to go after marginalized communities, all these talking points. No. Weaponized, like when a homeless bum weaponizes a baseball bat to rob someone's car in San Francisco. I like that tape that we just played. Ryan and Andrew, we should tweet that one next. I thought that was a good one. And it ended nicely. I thought that was good. If enough important people show up to San Francisco, you can have clean streets, but you can't have clean streets if communist dictators don't show up. To listen to the entire conversation of Gavin Newsom and I, we will continue to post it here. He has it on his podcast page as well. I will say everything they said they were going to do, they fulfilled. They didn't edit any of it. They gave us the video footage. So thank you to them and their team to do that. They were honest brokers. So that deserves recognition.